I should have known something was wrong when Sarah kissed me goodbye at the door. Not because she didn't kiss me. We'd been married 8 years, and morning kisses were routine as coffee. No, it was the way her lips lingered, half a second too long. The way her fingers clutched my jacket sleeve, like she was holding on to a life preserver in rough water. "Good luck with the contract," she whispered. "I know you'll close it." $33 million. The Henderson Tech acquisition that would make my career, transform our boutique consulting firm into a major player. I'd spent 6 months cultivating this deal, and tonight's dinner meeting in Boston would seal it. My luggage sat by the door, packed tight with presentation materials, backup drives, and the custom suit Sarah had insisted I buy for the occasion. "I'll call you from the hotel," I said, kissing her forehead. She smelled like her expensive perfume, the one she saved for gallery openings. Strange, since it was barely 8 in the morning, and she had no events scheduled. "Don't worry about me," she said. "Just focus on your deal." I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the Uber waiting downstairs. Our apartment building, a converted warehouse in Seattle's Pioneer Square, had terrible cell reception in the lobby, so I didn't check my phone until I was in the car. 3 texts from my business partner, Mike, all variations of "don't screw this up." One from my mother, asking if I'd remembered her birthday last week. I hadn't. The airport was the usual chaos of business travelers and screaming children. I made it through security with 20 minutes to spare and found a seat near my gate, planning to review my presentation one more time. That's when I opened my suitcase to grab my laptop. The white packet sat on top of my shirts, small and square, wrapped in plastic like a sandwich bag. I'd never seen it before. My first thought was that Sarah had tucked in a good luck note, something sweet to find before my meeting. But the packet was too thick for paper, too rigid. I picked it up carefully, weighing it in my palm. Maybe 2 ounces. The plastic was sealed with clear tape, and through the translucent material, I could see white powder. My stomach dropped into my shoes. This couldn't be what it looked like. Sarah didn't do drugs. She barely drank wine at dinner parties. We'd been together since college, and I'd never seen her touch anything stronger than Advil. But here it was, in my suitcase, in my possession, about to board a flight to Boston, where airport security was notoriously aggressive. I shoved the packet deep into my pocket and zipped the suitcase shut, my hand shaking. Around me, travelers scrolled through phones and sipped coffee, oblivious. An announcement crackled overhead about a delayed flight to Phoenix. Everything was normal except for the small bomb now burning a hole in my jacket. Think, I told myself. Think logically. There had to be an explanation. Maybe someone at the dry cleaners had mixed up bags. Maybe Sarah had found it somewhere and was taking it to the police, but forgot to remove it. Maybe. None of those maybes made sense. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah. It rang 4 times before going to voicemail. "Hey, it's me. Call me back right away. It's important." I tried to keep my voice calm, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. The gate agent announced pre-boarding for first class. That was me. Company always flew me first class for major deals. I stood up, suitcase in hand, and joined the line. Every step felt like walking toward a cliff edge. TSA had already screened my bag, but that was before I'd opened it. If I tried to dispose of the packet now, cameras would catch me. If I kept it, and somehow got caught in Boston, I'd be arrested. If I didn't board this flight, I'd lose the Henderson deal, and probably my career. I handed over my boarding pass with a smile that felt like a grimace. The agent scanned it and waved me through. No alarms, no security guards materializing from the shadows. Just a normal Wednesday morning flight. I found my seat, 2A, and tucked my suitcase into the overhead bin. The packet stayed in my pocket, a constant weight reminding me that nothing about today was normal. I pulled out my phone one more time. Still no callback from Sarah. The plane filled up around me. A businessman in 2B immediately opened his laptop and started typing. I closed my eyes and tried to slow my breathing. The rational part of my brain started working through possibilities. Sarah and I had been having problems. Nothing dramatic, just the usual 8-year marriage drift. She spent more time at her gallery than at home. I worked late most nights. Just last week, I'd noticed she'd changed her phone password. When I asked why, she'd said something about security updates. But drugs, planting them in my suitcase, that required a level of malice I couldn't connect to the woman who still left post-it notes with smiley faces on the bathroom mirror. Unless, the thought arrived fully formed, cold and clear, unless she wanted me out of the picture. Unless this wasn't about drugs at all, but about getting rid of me. The plane's engines roared to life. We taxied toward the runway, and I forced myself to breathe normally. In 4 hours, I'd be in Boston. I'd find a way to safely dispose of the packet. Then I'd call Sarah and get answers. The Boeing 737 lifted into the grey Seattle morning, and I watched the city shrink below. From up here, you couldn't see the problems. Everything looked clean and organized, like an architect's model. But I knew better now. I knew that beneath the surface, people you trusted could be planning your destruction. My phone buzzed just as the flight attendant announced we'd reached cruising altitude. A text from Sarah finally. "Sorry, in a meeting. Call you tonight. Love you." Love you. 2 words that once meant everything and now meant nothing. I stared at the message until the screen went dark, then slipped the phone back into my pocket next to the white packet that had changed everything. Before we continue, hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We'd love to get to know our audience better. Boston greeted me with rain and traffic. The Uber from Logan Airport to the Fairmont Copley Plaza took 45 minutes, giving me plenty of time to plan my next move. The packet was still in my jacket pocket, and every jostle of the car made me hyper-aware of its presence. The hotel room was classic Fairmont, expensive and impersonal. I dropped my suitcase on the bed and immediately locked the door, sliding the security bar into place. Then I pulled out the packet and stared at it under the bathroom lights. It was definitely powder, definitely suspicious, and definitely put there by my wife. I took a photo of it, just as documentation, then wrapped it in a hotel towel and shoved it into the room safe along with my passport. Out of sight but not out of mind. The meeting with Henderson Tech was in 3 hours, and I needed to focus. $33 million. My entire professional reputation. Mike was counting on me. Our 15 employees were counting on me. But first, I needed information. I called my younger brother, Danny, who practiced criminal defense law in Portland. We weren't particularly close. He'd gone into law to rebel against our engineer father, and I'd followed Dad's path into tech. But he was the only lawyer I trusted. "This better be important," he answered. "I'm in court in 20 minutes. If someone planted drugs in your luggage, what would you do?" Silence. Then, "What the hell are you talking about?" "Hypothetically." There's no such thing as hypothetical when you start a question like that. "Are you in trouble?" I explained the situation quickly, leaving out Sarah's name. Danny listened without interrupting, which meant he was taking it seriously. "Don't touch it again," he said when I finished. "Don't try to dispose of it. If you're caught with it now, you're looking at federal trafficking charges because it crossed state lines. If you try to dump it and someone sees you, that's evidence of guilt." "So what do I do?" "Where is it now?" "Hotel safe." "Good, leave it there. After your meeting, call the Boston PD non-emergency line. Explain you found an unknown substance in your luggage and ask them to collect it. They'll run tests, determine it's not yours based on lack of fingerprints or handling evidence, and file a report. You'll be clear." It made sense, but my gut twisted anyway. And if they don't believe me? They will. You're a 40-year-old tech consultant with no record. You voluntarily reported it. The narrative works in your favor. He paused. "Unless there's something you're not telling me." "There isn't." "Then you're fine. But whoever put that in your bag, they're not your friend. Think hard about who had access to your luggage. Only Sarah. The answer was so obvious I didn't need to think hard at all. I thanked Danny and hung up, then spent the next 2 hours reviewing my Henderson Tech presentation until I could recite it backwards. The meeting was scheduled for 6 p.m. at a steakhouse in Back Bay, one of those wood-paneled establishments where deals got made over rare ribeyes and expensive scotch. At 5:30, I put on my $3,500 suit and took a cab to the restaurant. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective. Boston's historical architecture looked particularly dramatic in the wet evening light, all brick and stone and history. James Henderson was already at the table, a silver-haired man in his 60s with the lean build of someone who played tennis 3 times a week. He stood when I arrived, hand extended. "Alex Morrison, good to finally meet face to face." We shook hands. His grip was firm but not aggressive. Good sign. "Thanks for making time," I said, sliding into my seat. "I know your schedule's insane. For $33 million, I'll make time." He smiled, but his eyes were calculating. This was a man who'd built his company from nothing and sold it twice already. He didn't make emotional decisions. We ordered drinks, scotch for him, bourbon for me, and spent the first 20 minutes on small talk. His daughter was graduating from MIT. My consulting firm had just landed a contract with Amazon. We discovered a mutual acquaintance from the Seattle tech scene. All the usual rituals of trust building. Then he leaned back and said, "Walk me through the integration timeline one more time. My CTO has concerns about the data migration." I launched into my presentation, pulling up spreadsheets on my tablet and walking him through every phase of the acquisition process. 6 months of preparation had gone into this moment, and I could feel it clicking into place. Henderson asked smart questions. I gave smart answers. By the time our steaks arrived, we were discussing implementation details, which meant he'd already mentally committed. "I'll have my lawyers draw up the contracts," he said, cutting into his ribeye. "We can close by end of month if your team can move that fast." "We can move that fast," he raised his glass, "to new partnerships." We clinked glasses, and just like that, I'd closed the biggest deal of my career. The moment should have felt triumphant. Instead, all I could think about was the white packet sitting in my hotel safe and my wife's too long goodbye kiss that morning. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Sarah. "How did it go?" I excused myself to the bathroom and called her. She answered on the first ring. "Hey, tell me you closed it." "I closed it." My voice sounded hollow even to my own ears. "Oh my God, that's amazing. We should celebrate when you get back. I'll make reservations at Canlis." "Sarah." I kept my voice low, aware of other restaurant patrons nearby. "Did you put something in my suitcase this morning?" The pause lasted 3 seconds too long. "What? No. Why would I do that?" "I found a packet, white powder, in my luggage." Another pause. Then, more carefully. "That's crazy. Maybe airport security planted it. I've heard they do that for training exercises sometimes." It was a reasonable explanation if you didn't know it was a lie. But I could hear the false note in her voice, the slight uptick at the end that meant she was improvising. "Maybe," I said. "I'll deal with it tomorrow. Just wanted to check with you first." "Of course I didn't put anything in your suitcase, Alex. That's ridiculous." There it was, the defensiveness that came with lying. 8 years of marriage meant I knew her tells. "Okay," I said. "I'll see you Friday." "Can't wait. I'm so proud of you." She hung up. I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Expensive suit, successful deal, everything I'd worked for, and felt nothing but cold certainty settling into my bones. My wife had tried to destroy me, and I didn't know why. I didn't call the Boston police. Danny's advice had been sound, but something stopped me from following through. If I reported the packet, there would be questions, an investigation. And investigations meant people digging into my life, my marriage, my business, The Henderson deal could evaporate overnight if even a whisper of drug trafficking attached itself to my name. Instead, I flushed the powder down the hotel toilet and threw the plastic bag into a trash can 3 blocks from the Fairmont. Then I walked back to my room and started thinking like the strategy consultant I'd trained to be. Question 1. Why would Sarah want to frame me for drug possession? Answer. To get rid of me without the mess of divorce. If I'd been arrested at the airport with cocaine in my suitcase, she'd have grounds to leave the marriage, take half of everything, and play the victim. I had no idea my husband was involved with drugs. Question 2. Was she working alone? The powder had been carefully packaged. Someone with experience had prepared it. Sarah was an art gallery manager who spent her days courting wealthy collectors and mediocre painters. Not exactly the profile of someone with drug connections, unless she had help. I opened my laptop and pulled up our joint credit card statements. Sarah and I kept our finances mostly separate. We'd each brought assets into the marriage and maintained our own accounts, but we had one shared card for household expenses. I scrolled through 3 months of charges, looking for patterns. Most of it was routine. Whole Foods, Amazon, her gym membership, my dry cleaning. But there were also charges I didn't recognize. Dinner at a restaurant called Altura twice in the past month. Always on nights I'd been traveling. Tickets to a Sounders game. Sarah hated soccer. A hotel room at the Edgewater for $240 on a Tuesday afternoon 6 weeks ago. I cross-referenced those dates with my calendar. Every suspicious charge corresponded to a night or afternoon when I'd been out of town or working late. My wife was having an affair. The realization should have hit me like a punch to the gut, but instead, I felt a strange kind of clarity. The pieces were falling into place. Sarah wasn't just trying to get rid of me. She was making room for someone else. Someone who'd convinced her that framing me was a good idea. I needed to know who. I flew back to Seattle on Friday afternoon, my mind churning with plans. The house would be empty. Sarah had texted that she was working late at the gallery, which gave me time to search. Our apartment was a 2-bedroom loft with exposed brick and huge windows overlooking Elliott Bay. Sarah had decorated it with her gallery connections, filling the space with abstract paintings that cost more than most people's cars. I'd always thought it looked like a hotel, beautiful but impersonal. Now I saw it differently. Now I noticed the fresh flowers on the kitchen counter, the expensive wine Sarah had bought for us, but I'd never drunk. The new throw pillows on the couch, the scented candles in the bedroom. She'd been preparing for someone. I started with her home office, a small room she'd claimed for gallery work. Her laptop was password protected, but her filing cabinet wasn't. I found invoices for art shipments, contracts with artists, promotional materials for upcoming shows. Nothing suspicious until I reached the bottom drawer, where a manila folder contained a stack of printed emails. They were from someone named Jason Reeves. The earliest was dated 8 months ago, a polite inquiry about a sculpture Sarah had posted on the gallery's Instagram. By the 3rd email, they were discussing meeting for coffee. By the 10th, the language had shifted into something unmistakably intimate. Can't stop thinking about Tuesday night, one read. You're incredible. I photographed every page with my phone, my hand steady, despite the rage building in my chest. 8 months. She'd been cheating on me for 8 months, and I'd been too focused on work to notice. The most recent email was dated 2 weeks ago. Once Alex is out of the picture, we can finally be together properly. The plan is solid, trust me. There it was. Confirmation that this wasn't just an affair, but a conspiracy. Jason Reeves wasn't just sleeping with my wife, he was helping her destroy me. I looked him up on LinkedIn. 34 years old, ran a boutique creative agency that appeared to consist of him and maybe one assistant. His profile photo showed a guy with carefully groomed stubble and the kind of confident smirk that came from never facing real consequences. His company bio was full of buzzwords. Innovative solutions, disrupting traditional paradigms, holistic brand experiences. Translation: he was a hustler with better marketing than substance. I dug deeper. His agency's website listed 3 clients, all of which were Sarah's gallery artists. He'd clearly met her through work, probably schmoozing at one of her openings. A Facebook search revealed he drove a leased BMW, lived in a Belltown apartment he couldn't afford, and posted motivational quotes about success and hustle. This was the man my wife thought was worth destroying our marriage for. I heard keys in the front door and quickly shut down my laptop. Sarah came in carrying Thai takeout. Her hair perfect, her smile bright. "You're home early," she said, kissing my cheek. "I brought dinner." "Henderson deal closed," I said, matching her casual tone. "Figured we should celebrate." "That's wonderful. Let me open some wine." I watched her move through our kitchen, pulling down glasses, chattering about her day at the gallery. She'd had a walk-in buyer interested in a piece by some emerging sculptor. A collector was coming next week to view the new exhibition. Everything was normal, everything was fine, except that she'd tried to send me to prison, and now she was pretending to be happy for my success. "How was Boston?" she asked, handing me a glass of Pinot Noir. "Productive. Got caught in the rain, but the meeting went perfectly." I sipped the wine. "Found something weird in my suitcase, though." Her hand tightened almost imperceptibly on her glass. "Oh. Yeah, some kind of powder in a plastic bag. I flushed it down the toilet. Probably just something from the airport, like you said." Relief flickered across her face. "Probably. You know how security is." "Right." I smiled at her. "Nothing to worry about." We ate dinner making small talk about the Henderson acquisition, her upcoming gallery show, whether we should repaint the bedroom. Well, she didn't know it. I did. The thing about revenge is that it requires patience. Hot anger leads to stupid decisions, and stupid decisions lead to prison or worse. I'd spent my career as a strategy consultant, teaching executives how to outmaneuver their competition through careful planning and precise execution. Now I'd apply those same principles to destroying my wife and her lover. First step, information gathering. I needed to understand their plan completely before I could dismantle it. I drove to Best Buy the next morning and bought a tiny surveillance camera disguised as a phone charger. Back home, I installed it in Sarah's office while she was at the gallery, angling it to capture her desk and computer screen. The camera connected to an app on my phone, recording continuously and uploading to cloud storage. Next, I hired a private investigator named Maria Chen, who came highly recommended by Danny's law firm. Maria was a former Seattle PD detective in her 50s, competent and discreet. I met her at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill and showed her the emails I'd found. "I need to know everything about Jason Reeves," I said, "where he goes, who he meets, what he's planning, and I need to know if my wife is still seeing him." Maria studied the emails without expression. "You sure you want to go down this road?" "Sometimes not knowing is easier." "I'm sure." "Okay, standard surveillance is $200 an hour plus expenses. I'll start with digital forensics, social media, financial records, known associates, then physical surveillance if needed." She pulled out a contract. "I'll need a retainer." I wrote her a check for $5,000 from my personal account. "How long until you have something?" "Week, maybe 2. These things take time." While Maria worked, I focused on my own investigation. The surveillance camera in Sarah's office paid off within 3 days. I watched her make phone calls to Jason, her voice honey-sweet and conspiratorial. I watched her compose emails and delete them. I watched her count cash in her desk drawer. $3,500 that certainly hadn't come from her gallery salary. The most revealing moment came on Wednesday afternoon. Sarah was on a video call with Jason, and I could hear both sides of the conversation through the camera's audio. "He's clueless," Sarah said, laughing. "I can't believe the airport thing didn't work." "It was a good plan," Jason replied. His voice matched his photo, smooth and self-satisfied. The package was clean, the placement was perfect. He must have found it before security. So what now? We go to Plan B. You file for divorce, claim emotional abuse, get a restraining order. I have a buddy who's a divorce lawyer. He'll back up whatever you say. We can drag it out for months, make Alex look unstable. You'll get the apartment and half his business. What about the prenup? Domestic abuse voids it. Trust me, baby, I've seen this work before. My hands clenched into fists as I listened. They weren't just destroying my marriage. They were planning to destroy my reputation, my business, everything I'd built. And they thought they'd get away with it. Maria called me the following Monday. You need to see this. We met at the same coffee shop. She slid a manila folder across the table, filled with printouts and photographs. Jason Reeves is a piece of work, she began. He's 34, originally from California, moved to Seattle 3 years ago after a string of failed ventures in LA. His creative agency is basically a front. He's got $17,000 in credit card debt, 2 months behind on his lease, and his BMW is about to be repossessed. So he's broke. Worse than broke, he's got a pattern. She pulled out more documents. This is the 3rd time he's had an affair with a married woman. In LA, he dated a woman named Rebecca Chen for 6 months while she was married to a real estate developer. She filed for divorce, got a settlement, and suddenly Jason had a new car and a down payment on a condo. He's a con artist. Bingo. The condo got foreclosed on within a year. Same pattern with another woman in San Diego. He finds unhappy wives, seduces them, convinces them to leave their husbands, takes what he can get, and moves on. I studied the photos Maria had provided. Jason leaving his apartment at 9 a.m. Jason meeting Sarah at a hotel. Jason at a bar with another woman who definitely wasn't Sarah. He's cheating on her too. Looks like it. That's Amanda Pierce, works in marketing at Amazon. I followed him for 3 days and he met with her twice. They were affectionate. I felt a grim satisfaction settling into my chest. This wasn't just about destroying them anymore. This was about exposing them, showing Sarah exactly who she'd chosen over me, and making sure Jason Reeves never ran this scam again. I need more, I told Maria. Financial records, text messages, everything. Can you do that? Some of it legally. Some of it costs extra. I wrote her another check. Do what you need to do. Over the next 2 weeks, Maria pieced together the complete picture of Jason Reeves's operation. He'd been targeting Sarah specifically because he'd researched my consulting firm and knew we were closing the Henderson deal. He'd calculated that our marital assets were worth at least $2 million, and Sarah's share would be enough to solve all his problems. The cocaine he'd convinced her to plant had come from a dealer he knew in Belltown. The plan had been simple. I'd get arrested at the airport, the scandal would destroy my business, and Sarah would leave me with her reputation intact and her bank account full. When that failed, they'd move to Plan B, fake domestic abuse claims and a prolonged divorce battle. Jason's buddy, the divorce lawyer, was actually another con artist working on commission. I compiled all of Maria's findings into a detailed dossier. Then I started planning the endgame. Sarah was hosting a gallery opening on the first Friday in November. It was a big event showcasing a new sculptor named Theo Williams, someone she'd been cultivating for months. She'd invited 200 people, collectors, artists, local celebrities, and of course, Jason Reeves. I told her I had to miss it because of work. She seemed relieved. It's fine, she said. I know you're slammed with the Henderson integration. I'll make it up to you, I lied. The gallery was in Pioneer Square, a converted warehouse with white walls and concrete floors. I knew the space well. I'd been to dozens of Sarah's events there. I also knew the building had a back entrance that led through the loading dock, and that the security system was more for show than function. I arrived at 8 p.m., wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap. The event was in full swing inside, jazz music and champagne flowing. Through the windows, I could see Sarah working the room in a red dress, her professional smile bright and brittle. Jason was there too, leaning against a wall with a drink in his hand, watching Sarah like a predator eyeing prey. I circled around to the loading dock and picked the lock with a tool I'd ordered from Amazon. Inside, the building's back hallways were dark and empty. I made my way to Sarah's office on the second floor, the surveillance camera still in place, still recording. I'd spent the last week preparing for this moment. In my backpack, I carried printouts of all the evidence Maria had gathered: Jason's criminal record, his past cons, his financial documents, the photos of him with Amanda Pierce. I also had transcripts of the conversations I'd recorded through the surveillance camera. I arranged everything neatly on Sarah's desk like an art installation. Then, I added one final touch. A letter I'd written explaining exactly how I'd uncovered their plan and exactly what I intended to do about it. The letter ended with, "I'll be waiting downstairs. Come find me." I locked the office door behind me and went down to the gallery floor. The opening was packed now, probably 150 people milling around with wine glasses, admiring Theo Williams's abstract sculptures. I grabbed a glass of champagne from a passing server and positioned myself near the back, watching. Sarah spotted me first. Her face went white, then flushed red. She said something to a collector and started moving through the crowd toward me. Jason noticed a moment later, his cocky smile faltering. "Alex," Sarah said when she reached me, her voice tight. "I thought you were working." "Finished early. Wanted to support my wife." I raised my glass to her. "Hell of a turnout." "What are you doing here?" "Same thing as everyone else. Appreciating art." I gestured toward one of Theo's sculptures, a twisted metal thing that probably cost $40,000. "This one's interesting. What do you think it represents?" "Alex, I left something for you in your office. You might want to go look at it." Her eyes flickered with panic. "Now? I'm hosting—" "Now." Jason appeared at her elbow, all false concern. "Everything okay?" I finally turned to look at him directly. He was smaller than his photos had suggested, maybe 5'9", with the build of someone who did CrossFit twice a week and talked about it constantly. Up close, his confidence looked more like desperation. "You must be Jason Reeves," I said, extending my hand. "I've heard so much about you." He shook my hand warily. "Have we met?" "Not formally, but I feel like I know you. Creative agency guy, right? Boutique solutions for modern brands." "That's right." "Must be going well. That's a nice watch." I nodded toward his wrist, where a Rolex gleamed. Probably fake, knowing what I knew about his finances. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Can we talk? Privately?" "Sure. Let's go to your office." We left Jason standing there and made our way upstairs. The hallway was empty, the party noise muted. Sarah unlocked her office door with shaking hands. The evidence was spread across her desk exactly as I'd left it. She stared at it for a long moment, her breathing shallow. "How long have you known?" she asked finally. "Long enough." She picked up one of the photos of Jason with Amanda Pierce. Her hand trembled. "Who is this?" "Amanda Pierce. Works at Amazon. Jason's been seeing her for the past 2 months. Did he mention her?" Sarah sank into her desk chair, the red dress suddenly looking too bright against her pale face. "This is all fake. You hired someone to fabricate this." "Maria Chen, former Seattle PD detective. She's very thorough. Want to see her credentials?" "This is insane. What's insane is that you tried to frame me for drug trafficking." I kept my voice level, almost conversational. "That's a federal crime, Sarah. 20 years in prison. And for what? So you could run off with a con artist who's already cheating on you?" "I didn't. I have recordings. Video from that camera right there." I pointed to the phone charger on her shelf. "Audio of you and Jason discussing your plans. All of it time-stamped and backed up to 3 different cloud services. Want to hear your greatest hits?" "He's Clueless" is my personal favorite. She stared at the camera, then back at me. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting myself. There's a difference. What do you want? What do I want? I laughed, a harsh sound. I want the last 8 months back. I want the marriage I thought I had. But we don't get what we want, do we? We get what we earn. So you're going to the police? Maybe, maybe not. That depends on what happens next. I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recording app. Jason's downstairs. Let's go talk to him together. I want to hear him explain himself. Alex, please. Not negotiable. You chose this, Sarah. Now you get to see it through. We went back downstairs. Jason was right where we'd left him, though now he looked nervous. The party continued around us, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Jason, I called out, join us outside. His eyes darted to Sarah, looking for guidance. She gave him nothing. We stepped out into the alley behind the gallery, the three of us. The November air was cold and damp, threatening rain. What's going on? Jason asked, his smooth voice finally showing strain. I know everything, I said simply. The cocaine, the plan, the divorce strategy, all of it. To his credit, he didn't immediately deny it. Instead, he looked at Sarah. What did you tell him? I didn't tell him anything. He's been spying. Smart man. Jason's face hardened. So what now? You want money? A clean divorce? What's your angle? My angle. I stepped closer. I don't have an angle. I'm not running a con. That's your specialty. Watch yourself. Or what? You'll have your dealer plant more drugs. You'll convince Sarah to file more false charges. I held up my phone. I have everything recorded, Jason. Your entire operation. Rebecca Chen in LA, remember her? San Diego. You're running the same scam you've always run. Only this time it didn't work. His jaw clenched. You don't know what you're talking about. The BMW that's about to be repossessed. The $17,000 in credit card debt. The fact that you're cheating on Sarah with Amanda Pierce. I showed him the photos. I know exactly what I'm talking about. Sarah made a small sound in her throat. Jason looked at her, and something ugly crossed his face. This is your fault, he said to her. I told you we needed to be more careful, but you had to leave evidence everywhere. My fault? Her voice rose. This was your plan. You went along with it. You convinced me Alex was abusive. I said what you wanted to hear. Jesus, you're as stupid as he is. I watched them turn on each other with cold satisfaction. This was what I'd wanted. Not just revenge, but revelation. Sarah needed to see exactly who she'd chosen. So what happens now? Jason asked, turning back to me. His bravado was cracking. You're going to the cops? That depends. On what? On whether you disappear. Tonight, get in that leased BMW and drive away. Don't contact Sarah. Don't contact me. Just go. And if I don't? I held up my phone. Then I send everything I have to the police, the Seattle Times, and every one of Sarah's gallery clients. Your face will be all over the news as the con artist who preys on married women. Good luck running that scam again. Jason looked at Sarah one more time. She was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. He smiled, cruel and satisfied. She's all yours, man. Good luck. Then he walked away, down the alley toward the street, and I never saw him again. Sarah and I stood in silence for a moment. The party continued inside, music and laughter filtering through the walls. I'm sorry, she said finally. No, you're not. You're sorry you got caught. We can fix this. We can go to counseling, work it out. There's nothing to fix, Sarah. You tried to destroy me. You chose a con artist over 8 years of marriage. That's not something counseling can repair. So you're divorcing me. I'm divorcing you. And you're going to make it easy. No lawyers, no fighting. You take your gallery salary and your personal accounts. I keep the apartment and my business. Clean break. That's not fair. We have assets. Fair. I laughed. You tried to send me to federal prison. Fair would be me going to the police right now. Fair would be your face on the news next to Jason's. This is mercy, Sarah. Take it or leave it. She wiped her eyes, smearing mascara across her face. Fine. Good. I'll have papers drawn up. You can sign them next week. What about tonight? The opening? Go back inside. Smile. Play the gracious host. Pretend everything's fine. You're good at pretending. She started to say something, then stopped. We stood there for another moment, the space between us vast and cold. Then she turned and walked back into the gallery, leaving me alone in the alley. I stayed there for a while, breathing in the night air, feeling the rage slowly drain out of my body. It wasn't satisfaction exactly, more like exhaustion. The kind that comes after a long battle that you've won but wish you'd never had to fight. My phone buzzed. A text from Mike. Henderson integration meeting Monday. You ready? I typed back, ready. Life would go on. The business would grow. The Henderson deal would make us millionaires. In 6 months or a year, maybe I'd meet someone new. Maybe I'd trust again. But tonight, I just wanted to go home. The divorce papers were signed 3 weeks later in a conference room at my lawyer's office. The sterile white walls, the faint hum of the overhead fluorescent lights, and the smell of leather-bound files created an atmosphere that felt more like a corporate transaction than the end of a marriage. Sarah looked smaller than I remembered, as if the weight of the past weeks had physically shrunk her. She wore jeans and a sweater instead of her usual gallery attire. No heels, no meticulously curated accessories, nothing that hinted at the persona she'd always cultivated in public. Her hair was pulled back loosely, and for a moment, I caught a flicker of vulnerability in her eyes, quickly masked by the neutral expression she had perfected over the years. She didn't cry. Neither did I. The room seemed to absorb our indifference, the absence of fireworks or tears, making the ending feel almost surreal, like a scene from someone else's life being played out in slow motion. We divided everything exactly as I had outlined. The process, surprisingly, was straightforward. She took her gallery salary, her car, and her personal bank accounts. I kept the apartment, my business, and, quietly, the satisfaction of knowing I'd beaten them at their own game. The lawyers went over each item meticulously, the sound of pen scratching against paper, punctuating the silence that stretched between us. I watched her gather her papers, her fingers shaking slightly as she organized them into a neat stack. It was a small tremor, a humanizing crack in the armor she had always worn. I really did love you once, she said softly, almost a whisper, as if afraid the words would lose their meaning if spoken too loudly. Her voice carried a tone of regret, a faint echo of the woman I once thought I knew. I know, I said simply, my voice calm, unburdened. There was no bitterness, no attempt at comfort, just acknowledgement. Do you hate me? She asked, looking up at me, her eyes searching for something that might no longer exist between us. I paused. I thought about it. Did I hate her? The woman who had once been my partner in everything, who had tried to destroy me, who had chosen a con artist over the life we had built together, who had thrown away 8 years for nothing more than a fleeting illusion of excitement. The answer should have been obvious, should have carried the weight of betrayal and fury, but it didn't. No, I said finally, choosing my words carefully. I just don't feel anything for you anymore. She didn't argue, didn't plead. She simply nodded, as if this had been the truth she feared to hear all along. Without another word, she left, her footsteps echoing down the hallway, fading into the background as the door closed behind her. The room smelled faintly of her perfume, a lingering reminder of what had once been, now reduced to nothing more than a scent on the air. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed. Maria Chen's name flashed on the screen. Thought you'd want to know, she said, her voice brisk but warm, the kind of voice that could cut through tension and make you feel grounded. Jason Reeves left Seattle. Looks like he's in Portland now. Already got a new LinkedIn profile set up. Think he'll run the same con? I asked, a sense of inevitability in my tone. Probably. People like that don't change. She paused as if weighing her next words carefully. You could warn the Portland police. I could. Or I could let karma handle it, I said. There was satisfaction in letting the universe play its part, in knowing that people who acted without conscience often faced consequences without intervention. Maria chuckled softly. You doing okay? Yeah, I'm good, I said. The words felt hollow and full at the same time, carrying the weight of relief, but also the residue of grief. You did the right thing, Alex. Not a lot of people would have handled it this cleanly. After we hung up, I stood at my apartment window, staring out at Elliott Bay. The water was grey and choppy, rolling in waves that mirrored the tumult of the past few months. Seattle weather did what it did best, indifferent to human emotion, relentless and unyielding. Behind me, the apartment felt larger, without Sarah's presence. Emptier, but also cleaner somehow. The absence of clutter, her things, her scent, her voice, created a space that wasn't sad, just waiting, expectant. A canvas, blank and ready for something new. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a text from Danny. Heard the divorce went through. Beer tonight? I considered ignoring it, staying home, drowning in introspection or self-pity, but the thought of stagnating felt unbearable. Sure. 7 work, I typed back. Perfect, came his quick reply. We met at a bar in Ballard, one of those neighborhood joints with craft beer, worn wooden tables, and the kind of loud music that makes conversation feel intimate and conspiratorial, despite the noise. We claimed a booth in the back, away from the main floor, and ordered pints. So how do you feel? Danny asked, sliding a glass across the table toward me. Tired, relieved, angry. All of the above, I admitted, letting the words fall into the dim lighting. That's normal. Divorce is hell, even when nobody tries to frame you for drug trafficking, he said, a wry smile tugging at his lips. His tone made me laugh, a small, bitter laugh that eased some of the tension I hadn't realized I was holding. I told him the whole story, every detail I had kept to myself until now. I recounted the schemes, the manipulation, the betrayals, the moments of doubt, and the small victories that had kept me going. Danny listened with the kind of practiced attention lawyers develop after years of navigating human folly, nodding in understanding but never interrupting, letting me lay the story out piece by piece. You know you could still press charges, he said when I finished, his voice low and measured. What she did was attempted conspiracy at minimum. Jason, too. I know, I replied, staring into my beer. The amber liquid reflected the dim light, a small, warming anchor in the swirl of thoughts. But you're not going to. What's the point? I said, shrugging. I got what I wanted. They're out of my life. Sending them to prison won't make me feel better. Danny drained his glass, the faint clink of ceramic against wood punctuating the quiet. You're probably right. Still, if it were me, I'd want them to suffer more. They will, I said. Sarah lost her marriage and her dignity. Jason's going to keep running the same scam until someone catches him. That's suffering enough. We stayed at the bar for another 2 hours, talking about everything except Sarah. The Seahawks' disappointing season came up. Danny's relentless caseload, our parents' upcoming anniversary. We talked about trivial things that reminded us we were still alive, still human, still brothers trying to reconnect after years of drifting apart. There was comfort in the normalcy, in the routine of friendship that survived betrayal and heartbreak. When I finally got home around 11, the apartment felt different. Not empty, not lonely, but open. The absence of her wasn't a wound anymore. It was a space waiting to be filled with something new, something untainted by the past. I walked slowly to the kitchen, brewed a cup of coffee, and carried it to the living room, letting the warmth seep into my hands. Outside, the wind had picked up, tugging at the edges of the blinds and rattling the window frames. The city sounded alive, indifferent to my personal victories or losses. I checked my work email and found a message from James Henderson. Integration ahead of schedule. Your team is impressive. Glad we're partners. Partners. The word carried a weight I hadn't felt in months. It wasn't just a professional term, it was validation, a signal that the 6 months of intense focus, late nights, and meticulous planning had paid off. Before Sarah and Jason had tried to derail everything, this had been my goal, my vision for the future. And now, despite the chaos, despite the personal betrayal, I had survived. More than survived, I had won. I replied to Henderson's email with something professional, courteous, and grateful. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment longer than necessary, savoring the act of communication, the bridge of connection that was purely constructive. After hitting send, I shut down my laptop. The quiet of the apartment enveloped me, deeper now, filled with the promise of focus and potential. Tomorrow, I would dive back into work. The Henderson integration would demand 6 months of rigorous attention, strategy, and leadership. Beyond that, Mike and I could finally think about expansion, about hiring more consultants, chasing larger deals, stepping into arenas we had only imagined during late-night planning sessions. But tonight was different. Tonight, I sat on my couch and allowed myself to simply be. Not numb, not hollow, not bitter. Just still. The city lights flickered across the walls, casting shadows that moved like silent witnesses to my solitude. I closed my eyes, letting the quiet wrap around me, a soft, protective cloak against the chaos of the world outside. I let the emptiness settle, not as loss, but as potential. It was a rare kind of peace, the kind that comes not from triumph alone, but from surviving, from moving past the storm, from understanding that life, in all its messy unpredictability, continued forward. The night stretched on. I listened to the wind, the faint hum of distant traffic, the occasional bark of a dog somewhere in the building. Each sound was a reminder that the world continued, indifferent to past failures and victories alike. And yet, within that indifference, I found freedom. Freedom from anger, from resentment, from expectation. Freedom to rebuild, to refocus, to reclaim what was mine. Not possessions, not accolades, not vindication, but life lived on my own terms. I thought about the future, letting it take shape slowly, piece by piece. The Henderson integration, the potential growth of the firm, the new friendships waiting to be forged, the experiences I had denied myself during the chaos of the past year. And in that quiet reflection, I realized something I hadn't admitted before. I was ready for the work, ready for the challenges, ready for whatever came next. Sarah and Jason were behind me, their shadows fading. The city was before me, alive and expansive, waiting for me to step into it with intention and focus. I poured the last of my coffee into the sink, rinsed the cup, and set it aside. The apartment no longer felt like a place I merely inhabited. It felt like a home again, a starting point rather than an end point. I stood for a moment, looking around, absorbing the space, the silence, the sense of possibility. And then, slowly, deliberately, I sat back down, leaning into the couch, letting my shoulders relax. The day, the week, the months of tension and betrayal, they were behind me. The future was ahead, undefined and vast, and for the first time in a long while, it was mine to shape. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't open a book. I didn't think about Sarah or Jason, or even the past at all. I simply let the stillness of the apartment fill me, filling the empty spaces not with fear or regret, but with a quiet, patient hope. The city outside continued to breathe, the wind continuing its restless dance across the bay. I breathed with it, in sync, grounded, ready. Tonight, there was nothing to do but feel nothing at all, and in that nothingness, I found everything. Hours passed. Darkness pressed against the windows, softened by the distant glow of street lights reflecting off the wet pavement. I could hear the faint clatter of a delivery truck making its way down the street, the muted chatter of neighbors returning home, the occasional siren in the distance. Life went on, indifferent, relentless, yet strangely comforting in its continuity. I stayed on the couch, letting the quiet surround me like a protective cocoon, the only witness to the calm that had finally settled over my world. For the first time in months, I felt unburdened, not because life had become simpler, but because I had survived complexity without losing myself. The past, Sarah, Jason, the betrayal, the fear, was no longer a chain around my neck, but a lesson in resilience, a testament to endurance and careful planning. I had emerged not just intact, but strengthened, tempered by adversity, my sense of purpose sharpened rather than dulled. I let my thoughts wander, exploring possibilities, mapping out potentialities, expansion of the firm, the Henderson integration, personal growth, maybe even travel or new experiences that I had put off for too long. The future seemed wide open, a blank page stretching before me, waiting to be written with intention, discipline, and perhaps a touch of daring. The apartment, once a symbol of loss, now represented opportunity, a space in which I could grow without constraint, build without interference, live without compromise. As the night deepened, I leaned back further into the couch, eyes closing against the dim glow of the city lights. My mind slowed, thoughts folding in on themselves, the endless hum of tension and anxiety dissipating into something quieter, steadier. The room, the apartment, the life I had reclaimed, it was all mine, free from manipulation, free from deceit, free from the ghost of what had been. I realized then that this was the victory I had sought all along, not vengeance, not restitution, not validation, but peace. The kind of peace that comes from surviving unscathed, from walking away from chaos with integrity intact, from knowing that even when the world conspires against you, you have the power to emerge whole. Outside, the wind picked up again, rustling through the trees lining the streets, carrying with it the faint tang of rain off Elliott Bay. I could feel it through the window, the pulse of the city, alive and indifferent, a perfect mirror for my own endurance. I sat there for a long time, drinking it in, savoring the quiet triumph that had been earned through patience, strategy, and an unwavering refusal to be undone. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me. I rose from the couch, moving slowly through the apartment, appreciating the space in a way I hadn't before. Each room seemed to hum with possibility, the emptiness transformed into an invitation. The bedroom, once cluttered with reminders of a shared life, now felt like a sanctuary. The kitchen, tidy and organized, promised nourishment and routine. The living room, open and quiet, offered reflection and contemplation. I climbed the stairs to the bedroom, the soft carpet muted under my feet. Sliding between the sheets, I felt the weight of the day and the weeks behind me dissolve. The apartment was still and calm. The city outside murmured its lullaby, and in that silence, I allowed myself to feel nothing at all. And yet, paradoxically, to feel everything that mattered. Freedom, clarity, and the quiet thrill of the life I had reclaimed. Sleep came slowly, deliberately, carrying with it the assurance that tomorrow would demand focus, energy, and ambition. But tonight was mine. Tonight was a testament to resilience, to endurance, to the capacity to walk through fire unscathed. And as I drifted into the darkness, the faint light of the city casting shadows across the walls, I felt an unspoken truth settled deep within me. I had survived, I had won, and the world, indifferent and relentless, awaited my next move. And so, as sleep finally claimed me, I rested in the knowledge that the past had no hold over me. The apartment, the city, the quiet aftermath of chaos, it was all mine. The future stretched endlessly ahead, unformed and promising. I had faced betrayal and deceit, navigated complexity with precision, and emerged intact. For the first time in a long while, I was unburdened. I was free. I was ready. And that, in itself, was victory. I closed my eyes, letting the silence and the darkness envelop me completely. For tonight, there was nothing else to do but be. Nothing to fear, nothing to regret, nothing to chase. Just the stillness, the quiet, and the deep, unshakable knowledge that I had reclaimed my life, and with it, my future. The night stretched on. Outside, the wind sang through the streets, mingling with the distant hum of the bay. The apartment, once a place of memory and tension, was now a sanctuary. I lay there, feeling the weight of everything I had endured, the battles fought, the victories earned, and for the first time in months, felt a sense of completeness. Not happiness in the naive sense, not joy in the fleeting sense, but a profound, grounding sense of being whole, of having arrived at a place I had fought for, step by step, choice by choice. And in that profound stillness, I let myself rest, knowing the future awaited, bright, wide, and mine to shape. 3 months later, I was having lunch with Mike at a sushi place downtown when I saw her, Sarah sitting at a corner table with another man. Not Jason. This guy was older, maybe 50, wearing an expensive suit that screamed venture capital or private equity. She saw me at the same moment. Our eyes met across the restaurant. She looked good, I had to admit. Her hair was different, shorter and blonde instead of brunette. She'd lost weight. The man she was with said something and she laughed, touching his arm. She was already moving on, already setting up the next relationship, the next life, as if the past 9 years had been nothing more than a placeholder. Mike followed my gaze. That her? Yeah. Want to leave? No. We finished our lunch without looking at them again. When we left, I made sure to walk past their table. Sarah's date was droning on about some investment opportunity in cryptocurrency. Sarah nodded along, her professional smile in place. She'd found another mark, or maybe this one was legitimate. Either way, it didn't matter anymore. Outside, the Seattle spring was doing its thing, brief sunshine between rainstorms. Mike and I walked back toward the office. You good? He asked. I'm good. Because if you're not... Mike, I'm good, really. And I was. The anger had faded, replaced by something calmer, understanding maybe, or just acceptance. Sarah was who she was, Jason was who he was, and I was who I was, someone who'd survived their betrayal and come out stronger. The Henderson integration finished ahead of schedule in April. Our firm's reputation exploded. Within 2 months, we had 3 new clients and revenue projections that would triple our size by year's end. Mike wanted to celebrate with a big party, invite all our clients and partners. We earned this, he said. Let's make noise about it. We held the party at a rooftop venue in South Lake Union, with views of the Space Needle and Puget Sound. 200 people showed up. Clients, employees, industry contacts. James Henderson gave a speech about innovation and partnership. Mike gave one about growth and gratitude. When it was my turn, I kept it short. A year ago, I almost lost everything. But I learned something important. Success isn't about avoiding failure or betrayal. It's about how you respond when those things happen. We built this firm on the principle that smart strategy always wins. Thank you for proving that right. Everyone applauded. Henderson shook my hand. Several potential clients asked for meetings. I stood at the edge of the roof later that night, watching the city lights reflect off the water. The party continued behind me, but I needed a moment of quiet. Hell of a speech, a voice said. I turned. A woman about my age stood there, holding a glass of wine. Dark hair, intelligent eyes, wearing a dress that was elegant without being flashy. Thanks. Are you a client? No, I'm Jennifer. I work with one of your new hires in accounting. Rachel invited me. Rachel's great, we're lucky to have her. She says the same about you. Jennifer smiled. Said you turned the company around after a tough year. Something like that. We talked for 20 minutes. Jennifer worked in urban planning for the city, helping design Seattle's transit expansion. She was smart, funny, and refreshingly straightforward. No games, no hidden agendas, just conversation. I should get back to the party, I said eventually. Me too, but maybe we could get coffee sometime, if you're interested. I thought about Sarah, about trust and risk, and whether I was ready to try again. Then I thought about standing still versus moving forward. I'd like that. She gave me her number and disappeared back into the party. I stayed on the rooftop for another few minutes, feeling something unfamiliar stirring in my chest. Not happiness exactly, more like possibility. My phone buzzed, a text from Danny. Saw the party photos on LinkedIn. Look at you, successful bastard. I smiled and typed back, thanks for everything. Anytime. That's what brothers are for. I went back inside to the party, to the noise and celebration and future that was unfolding exactly as I'd planned. Sarah and Jason were gone, disappeared into whatever comes next for people like them. The anger was gone too, replaced by something better. Freedom. The Henderson deal had been worth $33 million, but the real value was learning who I could trust and who I couldn't. Learning that I was stronger than I'd thought. Learning that revenge wasn't about destruction, it was about surviving, thriving, and building something better from the wreckage. I found Mike near the bar, laughing with Henderson and 2 potential clients. When he saw me, he raised his glass. To new beginnings, he said. I raised mine back. To new beginnings. And somewhere out there, in another city or another state, Sarah was probably running the same game with a new victim. Jason was probably setting up his next con. They'd keep doing what they did best, destroying and moving on, until someone finally stopped them. But that someone didn't have to be me. I'd already won. The party went until midnight. I shook 100 hands, made a dozen promises, planted seeds for deals that would bear fruit in the months to come. When everyone finally left and Mike and I were standing in the empty venue with the caterers cleaning up around us, he put his hand on my shoulder. You did it, Alex. After everything that happened, you actually did it. We did it. Yeah, we did. We left the venue and walked to our cars in the parking garage below. The city was quiet now, the streets empty except for late-night buses and the occasional taxi. My car started with a smooth purr, a reminder of everything I'd built and kept. I drove home through the streets I knew so well, past the gallery where Sarah used to work, past the restaurant where she'd had that first coffee with Jason, past all the landmarks of a life that no longer existed. None of it hurt anymore. It was just scenery, backdrop to a story that had already ended. The apartment was dark when I arrived. I turned on a single lamp and poured myself a bourbon, then stood at the window looking out at Elliott Bay. The water was black tonight, reflecting nothing. Somewhere out there, ships were moving cargo across the Pacific. Somewhere, people were living their lives, making choices, dealing with consequences. And somewhere, Sarah was probably lying to someone new, and Jason was probably seducing someone's wife, and the world kept turning despite all the betrayal and broken promises. But I was here, successful, free, ready for whatever came next. I raised my glass to my reflection in the dark window. To surviving, I said to no one. Then I drank and went to bed, and slept better than I had in a year.